Hey everybody, Ed Homewood. I hope everyone's doing well today. Today should be an interesting video. It has been for me. This is a speaker product from a good friend of mine who has designed some great speakers that I've reviewed in the past. It is the Neil Blanchard 4T4 little tower speaker. So, do me a favor, sit back, relax, and we're going to talk about these really cool DIY speakers. So the Neil Blanchard designed Tower 4T4, it's a mass-loaded transmission line speaker design, and Neil Blanchard will sell you the manual, the build manual, for $200. He will have flat pack pricing available shortly, so you'll be able to buy it as a complete kit. All you'd need to do is source the drivers and the crossover components, and you can build it yourself. And I don't think it would be that hard if you have some moderate woodworking skills. You don't have to cut anything, you're just gluing and assembling and clamping and those kinds of things. So it's called a 4T4 because it is a 4-inch tweeter, 4-inch, or MTM, mid, tweeter, mid, speaker design, narrow baffle. Now you'll notice the tweeters are offset. I actually have them reversed. The tweeters should be on the outside of how you set them up, and the imaging that they provide is absolutely staggering. We're going to talk about that in the summary. Now the cool thing about a mass-loaded transmission line is the design itself. This box is tuned to 25 hertz. That's the same tuning frequency uses for his bigger 6-inch tower speakers. These play low. And the transmission line extends the low bass response of any driver. It's really interesting how it works. And I don't have a lot of hands-on experience with it, but I can put in some generic photos of a transmission line. It's not particularly applicable to this one, but it is unique in how that that column of air inside the labyrinth, which is really what it is, acts as an additional resonator. Now I'll insert a picture. They're ported, slot ported out the back, and that's good because it gives you have them, I wouldn't put them any closer than about 18 inches to a wall, but you get some bass reinforcement off that. I'll talk about setup and everything in just a second. Now the cool thing about this is you're building it yourself. So Neil suggests the Dayton Audio 4-inch drivers, the SP Acoustics tweeter, but the crossover network you're free to do. He's got a couple of different designs. He doesn't provide any of the components for that, but he does have a relationship with a company that will do crossovers. More information on the Neil Blanchard Designs website. But you know what? The crossover is really cool, so let's take a moment and talk about that. Well, Neil was kind enough to build these in advance for me for the review because I'm not really good with woodworking stuff. And the interesting thing is the crossover he put in this, when you purchase the build manual or the flat pack from Neil, he'll give you, in the build manual, he'll give you a clickable link that gives you 3 options for the crossover: good, better, and best, and it lists the crossover parts for each of those 3 different crossovers. I've got the best, which he was very kind to do, and it's called a series crossover. And it's really interesting. Crossover point between the mid woofers and the tweeter is 3100 hertz. Now, the crossover itself uses Solon and Matasound air core coils. It uses odd-in cap plus capacitors with Mundorf Evo oil bypass caps, which is really, that's premium stuff. Dayton Audio 1% resistors, and it is a fascinating crossover in that it is a third order filter on the tweeter, which means it is 18 dB per octave, and a second order on the midwoofers, which means it's 12 dB per octave crossover. Now the series crossover is fascinating in that the series crossover diverts some of the signal that's filtered out of one of the drivers into the other drivers, and it tends to have a much smoother crossover point. The crossover itself makes the speaker a little bit more efficient, and it makes the modulus of impedance much smoother and much more even. So these are very suitable for tube amplifiers, and I've actually run them off of my 3-watt single-ended triode tube amp. Really good. Doesn't get super loud, but they sound beautiful. And the tube amplifier had no trouble driving them at all. So if you were to get the build manual or the flat pack, what you'll find is that the actual drivers themselves, the total cost for all of the drivers, the 4 midwoofers and the 2 tweeters, is about $150. The crossover network is going to vary in cost depending on which one you choose, good, better, best, which he lists out. He does recommend using all air core inductors. He does recommend using bypass capacitors. He claims that really opens up the soundstage. We're going to talk about that in the summary because that's one of the amazing things about this. But you need to use really high quality crossover components, and you need to use really high cost quality speaker terminals. I can't show you the speaker terminals this way. I'll insert a picture of them. You don't want any steel nuts in the binding posts or any of that other stuff. You want to use really good wire. Neil can make recommendations on all of that stuff. And when you do, the results are really outstanding. So let's do this. Let me talk about how I tested the speakers. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the music I used. We'll summarize things. I'll do my final thoughts, and we'll finish up with this video. Well, I've been fortunate. Neil's been very generous and allowed me to have these for a couple of months. So I've listened to him with a lot of different stuff. But rather than just list all the gear I tested him with, what I want to do is kind of talk about the gear that I found, specifically had a really good synergy with these speakers. One of them is my daily driver, and that is a marvelous amplifier. It is the Advanced-Paris A12 Classic. Now that is a big 180 watt a channel into 8 ohm dual mono Class AB amplifier that has a bias switch you can run, so you get the first several watts in Class A. It also has a 12 AT7 tube buffer on it. That was an amazing combination. At $4,500, that's very price appropriate for these. And that was just smooth and detailed and warm, and probably the one I listen to the most, just because that's normally in my setup. I did test with another big integrated, the Soul Note A2, which is a big dual mono Class AB, heavily biased into Class A integrated amplifier. Now that is a different sound to it. No tube buffer. That is a super detailed, very powerful, very, very well constructed, beautifully built Japanese integrated amplifier. And that has a totally different sound character. And I'll talk about it in the summary, but that was more detailed, a little bit more energetic than the Advanced-Paris unit. And then just kind of a budget unit, I did use the Advanced-Paris XI75, which is a 75 watt per channel integrated amplifier. It has a beautiful sound to it, and that worked quite well with this. Now, for separates, I used a couple different combinations. A lot of the time I use the Advanced-Paris. You're going to see I like Advanced-Paris gear. The Advanced-Paris XP700 preamp with the Pearl Acoustics 7040. That is a Purify Class D dual mono amplifier. That's a wonderful combination. That's a really magic combination. I did, on occasion, substitute the XP700 preamp for the Black Ice F360 preamp. Again, a magic combination. That Pearl Acoustic 7040 amplifier is a wonder. Thomas was kind enough to send me his Galleon TP75 and TSA75 amplifier preamplifier combination. That preamplifier is a full tube preamp, and that amp is a nice solid state amplifier. Really good combination. That sounded wonderful as well. Now for sources, I always stream from Artivana. You guys know that. There is a link to try a 30-day free trial of Artivana in the description. I used the Live Harmony DAC. I used the Shit Bifrost, which was my old daily driver. It's kind of a Frankenstein. And then I used my traditional analog rig, which is a Fluence RT85 with an Audio-Technica moving coil cartridge and the Cambridge Audio Alva Duo Phono preamplifier. Now, for all my cables for the listening for this, all of them were Advanced-Paris link cables. So now you got an idea how I tested it. Let's talk a little bit about the music I used. I'll summarize, and then we'll get this thing finished. So for music on this particular review, I used tracks off my Old Guy Hi-Fi Test Tracks Volume 1. If you subscribe to those, or if you haven't, check them out. I'm always adding stuff to Volume 1 and Volume 2. There's always going to be good tracks there. So the first track I'm going to talk about is this track from Stevie Ray Vaughan called Tin Pan Alley, or AKA Roughest Place in Town. Now his guitar tone, what a masterful guitarist he was. It is gritty. This is raw electric blues. He's very expressive in the way he bends the string and holds his vibrato. It is marvelous to listen to him work that guitar. He has just the best technique. It is wonderful and very earthy and very immediate sounding. Now, the rhythm and dynamics of this track, it's slow. It's a deliberate blues groove with a very subtle dynamic shifts throughout. The drums and the bass provide this really solid but kind of restrained backbone that kind of everything hangs off of, and his guitar work kind of floats on top of, or is, I guess, that creates the bass and the drums create a foundation on which he builds, and it's wonderful to listen to. The tonal character of the song is it's very warm, it's very full-bodied. It has this slightly kind of roomy live feel to it. Very much an emphasis on mid-range and the guitar resonance. This is a beautiful recording too. Now, from a soundstage standpoint, the instruments should feel close and immediate, as if you're in a small club. So the soundstage width is not super wide, but there is some depth to it. And again, this is a studio recording, so the imaging was created by the mixing engineer, but it has a very natural sound to it. And of course, Stevie Ray Vaughan's right in the center of it. And his guitar, this is a magnificent recording. You got to check it out. Again, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Tin Pan Alley. So the next track is this track from Rodrigo y Gabriela, and it is a cover of Stairway to Heaven. And it is a very interesting Latin influence cover of Stairway to Heaven. The guitar tone on this, the acoustic guitars are really percussive. They're fast, they're rhythmic. It is very, very energetic in that regard. What I want you to listen to is, or listen for, is the slap against the body of the guitar, the finger slap. You'll hear the player's fingernails on the wood body of the guitar. I also want you to listen for the intricate finger picking. There's a lot of stuff going on here, whether it's picking on the neck or not. Now, there's a couple of guitars going on here. I don't know if it is a single player double tracked or if it's two players playing at the same time, but that gives this interlocking texture, this interlocking guitar patterns that create this kind of dense, but still kind of transparent texture to it. It is a fascinating piece. It is extraordinarily dynamic and very energetic. The crescendos are wonderful. And again, the interplay between the guitars is fascinating. It's a great recording. Whoever mixed it did a great job. The tonal character of this one, though, is a little bit bright. It's crisp acoustic timbre to it, strong attack, great clarity. And again, the microdynamics are, listen for those. They're fascinating. Fingers on the neck, either a fingernail or a pick on the strings of the guitar. It's just beautiful. Now, from a soundstage standpoint, the separation is just kind of between the two guitars. This is a very intimate recording. There's not a lot of width or depth to it, but listen in, because again, the dynamics and the microdynamics of this particular recording really make it fascinating to listen to. And it's a fascinating take on a song we all know really, really well. So for the last track I want to talk about, it is this track from Anna-Sophie Mutter for Herbert von Karajan and the Berlin Philharmonic. It's Mozart's Violin Concerto No. 3, K216, and it is the rondo, and it's played allegro. So Anna-Sophie Mutter's violin tone on this is brilliant. It's very polished. It's warm yet clear. She has a very expressive vibrato, very excellent phrasing. Her bowing is magnificent. Now, the orchestration that von Karajan brings to this, it's light. It's a transparent kind of classical accompaniment, good strings, good woodwinds, very subtle balance of all of it, not to take anything away from the violin soloist. Now, dynamics and articulation on this, very elegant contrast between the soft passages and the more energetic rhythmic sections. The crescendos are beautiful. The actual sound of the orchestra is quite lovely and very intricate. You can listen deep into this particular recording. Now, the tonal character overall of the track is very clean, it's very airy, it's very refined. There's an emphasis on clarity. I think it's a Deutsche Grammophon recording, so that would be true. There's an emphasis on clarity and articulation rather than an emphasis on power and dynamics. From a soundstage standpoint, the instruments occupy a very natural concert hall sense of depth and width, but the violin kind of floats slightly out in front of the orchestra, obviously standing up near the conductor during the performance, so she is forward. The soundstage is very wide, it's deep. It's a wonderful recording, and I love Anna-Sophie Mutter. She was a child prodigy. I mean, she started her career, she started recording with the Berlin Philharmonic, I think she was 15. So give this track a listen, I like it a lot. So now, let's talk about my final thoughts on these particular speakers. This is a truly remarkable speaker system. If you're fortunate enough to be able to build these from the plans or buy the flat pack from Neil and build it with his recommended components, you're going to be rewarded with without question, one of the finest sounding DIY speakers I've ever heard. Actually, maybe one of the finest sounding speakers I've heard. These are truly unique and truly remarkable. Are they 100% full range? Did I hear down to that 25 hertz tuning frequency? Probably not. And again, my room is a bit unique. When I have them set up, I'm about 11 feet from the speakers. They're about between 9.5 and 10.5 feet apart, but they're 4 feet out from the front wall, and that's a false wall, and there's a concrete wall 3 feet behind that. So I get very little room gain on rear-ported speakers like this mass-loaded transmission line. So while I could sense that there was bass down low, it was very much more like a 10 dB down, or maybe a little bit more than that down response. Real good honest bass. I was certainly getting into the upper 30s with good authority without any issue whatsoever. For the review, I never listened to them with a subwoofer, but for casual listening, yeah, I did. I listened to them with a subwoofer, and they blended beautifully, and they were full range. So for the normal bass response, acoustic bass, electric bass, all of that was done very well. Beautiful response, good and fast. And that's the nice thing about these small drivers, is they respond very quickly, and they don't have a lot of inertia to overcome. So they respond really quickly. The drum kit sounded beautifully. The guitars sounded absolutely gorgeous and very percussive, and the attack was fast. Transients were really, really quick in the mid-range without question. I thought and I listened to a lot more music than just the 3 tracks I talked about. Piano sounded very wonderful. Even up on the right hand, it sounded very natural. There was no ringing. These are very smooth yet very detailed speaker system. Now, some of that has to do with the electronics you pair with them, and I found with the Advanced Paris A12 it was very smooth and warm and detailed and just lush, and it was right in my wheelhouse for sonics. Now with the Soul Note A2, which is a very much more analytical, much more energetic amplifier, these responded accordingly, and I got much more extended or much more detailed high frequency information out of them, and they responded very well, and they just reproduced the music beautifully, even with that more energetic amplifier. With Thomas the Galleon preamp and amplifier, that preamp of Thomas's has this beautiful, warm, lush, very good bass response. It's a full tube preamp, just gorgeous with clarity caps inside. That was a great combination. No matter what electronics I put on this, I got a very good character. I got a very good sonic character of the electronics themselves. These tended to be neutral, although I think they are very much have a warm tonal character, very natural, very natural sound to them. Listening to the Stevie Ray Vaughan's electric guitar, it was gritty. You could hear the grit. You could hear the vibrato on it. You could hear, his probably overdriven Fender tube amp on it. On the Anna Sophie Mutter recording, her violin I love because it occupies a very similar frequency response range as the human voice does. And her violin just had this natural tonal character to it, just beautiful. Now, imaging, these are stellar at doing imaging. They will just, in my room, they sonically disappeared. I could literally open my eyes and go, all right, I can't tell if the sound's coming from those speakers or if it's just this immense soundstage behind them, and that's really what I got out of them. Obviously, any studio recordings, the soundstage is created by the engineer, but any of the classical music or any of the kind of more, I hate to say audiophile, but more kind of high-end audiophile recordings, you got a much more natural soundstage. Instrument placement was just beautiful and very sharp. On the Anna Sophie Mutter recording, I've listened to the Berlin Concert Hall, through Berlin, Deutsche Grammophon recordings forever, for years. I feel like I have a good sense for the sound of that hall. And these things did a great job of reproducing the sonic character of that hall, the boundaries, the walls, everything. I could hear that orchestra just beautifully placed on the stage. There was great layering of all the instrumentation. I don't care about laser focus instrument placement. I want a general placement, and I got that beautifully, and it was warm, and it was rich, and it was lush. But interestingly, Anna Sophie Mutter's violin was very much forward of the instrument, the orchestra itself, as if she would have been standing right near Von Karajan conducting, and so she would have been at the front edge of it, at the kind of the front edge of the stage, but she never got beyond the front boundary of the speakers. She still was placed properly back and in that very, very well-appointed soundstage. These are soundstage monsters. They do a fascinating job. It's just such a rewarding listen. If you have the opportunity to build these, or get the flat pack or whatever, you're going to be in for a treat. If you, again, like I said, if you follow Neil's recommendations for the componentry, especially for the crossover componentry, just remarkable. Highly recommended. These are contenders for one of the best speakers I've heard all year, without question. Just remarkable. Again, the Neil Blanchard design Tower 4T4. Wow, what a great speaker. Well, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Hopefully you'd consider giving me a like and your subscription. Hopefully you'd consider ringing the bell so you get notified the next time I put out a video. Please, if you would be so kind as to donate your subscription, that would be great. About 60% of the folks who watch my videos aren't subscribed, and it would help the channel a lot. A good subscriber base lets manufacturers know we have a great community, and they're more likely to send me cool gear to play with. And you'll see I've got some great stuff, and you have seen that I have some great stuff in some of the videos I've put out recently. So again, please consider subscribing. I would like to take a moment and thank my current channel members and subscribers. Thank you so very much for your support. I appreciate it. There will be a link to Neil Blanchard Designs website in the pinned comment and video description. I have no affiliation with Neil other than he's a friend. There will also be in the pinned comment and video description a channel membership link if you'd consider doing that. There are some affiliate links in the video description. There's a link to the community post playlist. Please check that out. Comment. Let me know your thoughts. Are you a DIYer? Is this something you might consider doing? I think this would be a wonderful project. If my kids were younger, this might be something I'd consider doing with them out in the garage together as a family project. It would be a lot of fun. So comment, let me know your thoughts on that. I think I've said everything I need to say about these wonderful speakers. So please, again, please like, subscribe, comment, follow me on Instagram if you want to. My name is Ed Homewood. This is the Old Guy Hi-Fi channel. And as I always tell you, please find some time today to put on the music you love and just sit back and relax and enjoy yourself. Thank you so much for your time. I really hope you have a wonderful day.